All right, let's dive straight in. We've got your sources here on a really fascinating topic, deep work.
Yeah, it's definitely timely.
It really feels critical right now. And this material you shared, it paints quite a picture. So our mission, let's say, for this deep dive is to unpack it, to just figure out what deep work actually is, why it's apparently so valuable, but also getting rarer, and crucially, how you, the listener, might cultivate it.
Exactly. Think of it as getting a handle on a skill that seems increasingly essential.
A shortcut to thriving today, maybe?
Something like that. Though it sounds simple, right? Just focus. But it pushes against a lot of how modern work is set up.
It takes effort then.
Deliberate effort, yeah.
Okay, so let's start right there. According to this material, what is deep work? How do they define it?
The sources are pretty clear. They frame it as focused, uninterrupted intellectual effort, the kind that pushes your thinking abilities to their limit.
Okay.
And the goal is either creating genuinely new value or, seriously improving a skill.
And that's set against shallow work.
Exactly. Shallow work is the other stuff. The non-cognitively demanding tasks, often logistical things you can do while distracted.
Like routine emails, maybe?
Yeah.
Simple scheduling?
Yeah, or attending meetings where you don't need full concentration, that kind of thing.
So the difference between, say, writing a complex strategy doc versus just clearing your inbox.
That's a perfect example. And the argument is this deep focus, it's becoming way more valuable. Because of what the sources call the Great Restructuring.
Driven by tech, right?
Driven by technology, yeah. It's changing the economic landscape.
And they pinpoint 3 specific groups who have a big advantage now.
That's right. First, people who can work effectively with intelligent machines. Second, the absolute best at what they do, the so-called superstars. And third, those with access to capital.
Okay, and deep work seems essential for those first 2 groups. Let's take working with intelligent machines first.
Well, think about it. Mastering complex tools, extracting real value from, say, huge data sets that take serious concentration. The sources use Nate Silver as an example. He's not just using data, he's working deeply with databases, complex stat systems like Stata. You can't just type in a quick question and get his results.
You need mastery.
You need mastery, and mastery takes deep work.
Right. Okay, so focus helps leverage tech. What about becoming a superstar, this winner-take-all market idea?
Yeah, this draws on economics. Sherwin Rosen's work from back in '81, he talked about talent having imperfect substitution.
Meaning?
Meaning you can't just stack up 10 average programmers and get the output of one truly exceptional one. There's a massive premium on being the best.
And tech has amplified that.
Totally. High-speed networks, collaboration tools, they've flattened everything. Markets that used to be local, like consulting or programming or writing, are now global.
So consumers can find the best anywhere.
Exactly. The sources mentioned David Heinemeier Hansen, DHH, the programmer, works remotely, serves clients globally. Fantastic for him.
But maybe not so great for the average local programmer.
Makes it much tougher for them, yeah.
But
that geographical protection is gone.
Ah, okay. So deep work is how you sharpen your skills to actually reach that elite, globally competitive level.
Precisely. It fuels skill development and mastering the tech. It's the engine for both.
And it's also just fundamental for producing high-quality work at a fast pace. Adam Grant at Wharton comes up here.
Oh yeah, Adam Grant's story is striking. Youngest full professor at Wharton, 10 years super quick. And the reason? An absurdly high rate of major publications, plus a bestseller.
And his method involved batching his work.
Yes, really intentionally structuring his time. Like all teaching in one semester, then the spring and summer totally dedicated to research.
Creating those long, uninterrupted stretches.
Exactly. Long blocks for deep work. That's how he managed that incredible output.
Okay, so the value seems undeniable. But here's the puzzle the material raises. If it's so valuable, why is it getting rarer?
That's the core tension, isn't it? The very way we work now, the expectations, the environments, they actively seem to undermine deep work.
One concept that jumped out was attention residue. What's that about?
It's the idea that when you switch tasks, your brain doesn't fully switch with you. Part of your attention, a residue, stays stuck on the last thing you were doing.
Okay.
And that hurts your performance on the new task. It's apparently worse if the previous task was unfinished or maybe low intensity. Gloria Mark's research is mentioned, showing even short interruptions make tasks take significantly longer.
So our brain is still chewing on that last email while we're trying to focus on this report.
Kind of, yeah. And constant connectivity, email, Slack, Teams, they just amplify this massively.
Worse than older methods.
Way worse, because they're designed for always-on, real-time presence. It encourages this constant stream of tiny interruptions, fragmenting attention even more.
And the pressure to be always visible on social media, that's mentioned too, especially for some jobs.
Oh, definitely. It pulls knowledge workers. Journalists are a key example in the sources away from their actual deep work. For them, that's digging into sources, serious reporting, crafting careful prose. Instead, they're pushed towards what's called frothy back-and-forth online tittering.
No. Okay. George Packer called Twitter crack for media addicts. He actively avoided it while writing his big book, The Unwinding.
Wow, that's a statement.
It is. And even someone like Alyssa Rubin doing incredibly important deep work like cultivating sources in war zones, she still apparently gets urged to tweet more. It's a bizarre pressure against the core valuable skill.
And then there's the physical space, the open office.
Ah, yes, the open office, pitched initially to boost communication serendipity, you know.
I remember that buzzword.
Yeah. People like Josh Tarangel at Bloomberg, Jack Dorsey at Square talked about it. But the material argues these spaces are actually pretty hostile to deep thinking. It's just too distracting.
Unlike, say, Bell Labs.
Right. Bell Labs under Mervyn Kelly was designed differently. Long hallways to encourage chance encounters, sure.
Here.
But between focused work sessions in private offices, not during them, big difference.
So, okay, deep work is valuable. These factors are clearly undermining it. Why do we keep embracing the distractions? Why isn't deep work the thing everyone's trying to protect? It's tricky. The sources point to a few things. One is the metric black hole.
Meaning it's hard to measure the cost of not doing deep work.
Exactly. The impact of constant interruptions, shallow tasks. It's hard to put a number on the lost value. It's in this opaque region. And if you can't easily measure the loss, deep work becomes vulnerable. Easier, more visible behaviors tend to win out.
Which leads to the next point. Busyness as a proxy for productivity.
Right on. If you can't clearly measure valuable output, people default to looking busy, doing lots of stuff in a visible manner.
Sending lots of emails, quick replies on chat, always being in meetings.
Being seen in the open office, yeah.
Yeah.
All that stuff looks productive, even if you're not actually producing deep, valuable work.
The Marissa Mayer Yahoo example is pretty stark here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Checking VPN logs.
Yeah, punishing remote workers for not logging in enough throughout the day. It sent a clear signal. Visible busyness was the priority, not necessarily actual, potentially deeper, less visible productivity.
Wow.
And finally, there's Neil Postman's concept of technopoly.
The idea that we just assume new tech is good without really questioning the downsides.
Pretty much. We adopt it without a real discussion of the trade-offs. So alternatives like, say, deliberately disconnecting for focused work, they become almost invisible and therefore irrelevant.
Just not part of the conversation.
Right. Evgeny Morozov's critique fits here too, this tendency to treat the internet as this single source of wisdom, an uber ideology, which stops us from thinking critically about its effects on things like focus.
So the deck is really stacked against deep work environment, measurement issues, social pressure, cultural bias. But then the material shifts, which I found really interesting, towards the meaningfulness of it all. It's not just about productivity.
Exactly. This is about, well, human flourishing, satisfaction. There's a neurological argument connecting attention to happiness. Winfred Gallagher's story is used here.
After her cancer diagnosis.
Yeah. She consciously chose to focus her attention intensely on the good things in her life. Movies, walks, and a 6.30 martini, as the quote goes, despite everything else going on.
And she found her life during that time often quite pleasant.
Because what you pay attention to fundamentally shapes your reality. So applying that to work, controlling your focus, giving rapt attention to chosen tasks, that maximizes meaning and satisfaction. The sources basically say a focused life is the best kind there is.
That's powerful. And there's also this craftsmanship argument, like comparing knowledge work to traditional crafts.
Yeah, we often think of meaning in work relating to, a blacksmith, a wheelwright.
Right.
But the meaning there isn't necessarily in the end product. A wheel isn't inherently noble. It's in the skill, the application of craft, the appreciation of the craft.
And the sources say that applies to knowledge work too, not just manual trades.
Absolutely. Any pursuit, physical or cognitive, that demands and supports high levels of skill. There's a quote from Santiago Gonzalez about programming. Something like, our engineering may seem archaic, while our craftsmanship will still be honored. It's that same mindset.
And deep work is essential for that craftsmanship.
It is the craftsmanship in a way. It's how you build the skill and apply it at that elite level. So embracing deep work, focusing it on honing your skills. The sources suggest it can turn even a draining job into something satisfying, a portal to a world full of shining, wondrous things.
So it challenges that whole follow your passion narrative a bit. It's less about the job title and more about the approach.
Exactly. You don't need a supposedly rarefied job. You need a rarefied approach, a deep approach.
Okay. Value, meaning rarity.
Mm-hmm.
We get it.
Yeah.
But knowing isn't enough. Right? The pull towards distraction is strong. You need a plan.
You need a plan, a strategy, a rigorous program, as the sources put it, a personal philosophy. Just trying to fit deep work in ad hoc usually doesn't cut it against limited willpower and constant distraction.
Need a system. So let's get into the rules, the strategies. Rule #1. Work deeply and choose your philosophy.
Right, because different things work for different people. Think Carl Jung building his tower for retreats, or Bill Gates and his isolated think weeks.
Total immersion.
Yeah. Or Neil Stephenson just being deliberately bad at email to protect his writing time. Different styles.
And they mentioned different scheduling philosophies. Bimodal, journalistic.
Yeah, bimodal is like Jung or Gates, long periods away. Journalistic is fitting it into smaller gaps when you can, like Walter Isaacson writing on a busy family vacation, apparently. And then rhythmic, which is probably most common for office job scheduling regular, fixed, deep work sessions, making it a habit.
And rituals are key for any of these.
Super important. Define where you'll work, ideally somewhere used only for deep work, even if it's just a specific chair in a noisy office. Define how long for, and define how rules like no internet, specific process steps, maybe tracking words per hour.
Takes the decision-making out of it each time.
Reduces the willpower needed, exactly.
I'm
People
sorry.
like Dan Pink or Michael Pollan building separate writing cabins, that's a grand version of creating that ritualized space.
Okay. Rule #2. Embrace boredom. Sounds counterintuitive.
It's not about being bored, but about training your brain to resist the urge to seek distraction the moment boredom hits. Rewiring your response.
Building concentration like a muscle.
Exactly. The example of Orthodox Jews studying complex texts daily it's a practice in sustained focus. Or Theodore Roosevelt in college.
Oh,
Intense work bursts, then complete undistracted leisure. That ability to switch off the craving for stimulus helps both work and relaxation.
and productive meditation.
That's a specific technique. Focus intently on one well-defined professional problem while doing something physical but mindless, walking, jogging, commuting.
Got it.
And when your mind wanders, maybe you start composing an email in your head, you gently notice it, tell yourself you can deal with it later, and redirect back to the problem. It's practice for resisting distraction.
Rule #3 is pretty direct. Quit social media, or at least apply the law of the vital few.
Yeah, acknowledging that these network tools fragment our time. Barrington Thurston's #unplug experiment showed that. The sources argue against the any benefit mindset. If there's any possible value, I should use it.
Right.
Instead, adopt a craftsman approach. Use a tool only if its benefits clearly and significantly outweigh its costs, especially in terms of attention. Like Forrest Pritchard, the farmer mentioned, carefully choosing his tools.
So applying the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle.
Exactly. Ask, does this tool massively support the core 20% of activities that deliver 80% of my value? Gladwell, Michael Lewis, George Packer, avoiding Twitter, it makes sense through this lens. Twitter offers some minor benefits, maybe, but it doesn't serve their main value-creating activity, writing, and the attention cost is too high for them.
And for personal tools, entertainment sites, that packing party idea.
Yeah, take a 30-day break. See what you actually miss. Let the FOMO fade and assess the real value or lack thereof. Thurston's experiment showed adjustment is possible, but you need a conscious plan to not just slide back.
And find better alternatives for downtime.
Give your brain quality alternatives, yeah. Something demanding and engaging instead of passively consuming easy-to-digest stuff from sites designed to hook you. It makes leisure more fulfilling. Arnold Bennett apparently observed this over a century ago.
Wow. Okay, rule #4, drain the shallows. Be aggressive about minimizing shallow work.
The Basecamp 37 Signals experiment is telling here. Shorter work weeks, free months. What got cut was mostly shallow stuff. Meetings, emails, coordination, the valuable deep work output, largely unaffected.
Shows how much shallow work might be dispensable.
And how it crowds out the deep work. Remember, the biological limit for deep work is maybe 4 hours a day for experts. Shallow work is only really a problem if it stops you from hitting that limit.
But it easily can.
Oh, easily. So strategies are needed, especially for email. Sender filters is one idea.
Like Donald Knuth's public policy, making people jump through hoops.
It's an extreme example, but it illustrates setting high-friction boundaries to protect your time. Reclaiming control. Tim Ferriss's advice fits. Develop the habit of letting small bad things happen so you have time for the big things. People adjust.
And the other email tactic? Do more work up front.
Yeah, when sending or replying, put in the effort to be crystal clear. State the goal, provide context, anticipate questions. Avoid those vague productivity landmines that just create endless back and forth.
Takes more effort initially, but saves time overall.
Reduces the total shallow communication load, exactly.
So these rules, this whole framework, it's a way to actively fight back, right? It brings us back to the payoff. Deep work drives real value. Bill Gates and Microsoft.
A billion-dollar industry born from focused effort, yeah. And the author's own experience, publishing solid papers while balancing life by prioritizing depth, it shows it's not just for icons, it's a practical skill.
So there we have it. A deep dive into deep work. Its value, its rarity, its meaning, and critically, how to actually cultivate it in a world seemingly set against it. It feels like embracing this isn't just about getting ahead at work.
No, it's deeper than that. It's about making work, and maybe life itself, more meaningful, more satisfying.
Because, as the sources suggest, maybe a focused life, a deep life. Maybe that really is the best kind.
It's a compelling thought.
It is. So, thinking about everything we've just discussed, maybe the question for you listening is, what specific shallow task or tool could you realistically try eliminating or restructuring, even just this week?
And on the flip side, what truly valuable work or what deeply meaningful activity could you choose to give your focused, rapt attention to instead? Something to chew on.